I don't say this lightly, but I really genuinely feel like maybe the decision could be made to consider Colin Kaepernick here, just because I don't know what other quarterbacks are available that they could bring in. And if they did it, then it would make Dan Synder suddenly, he would go from pariah for claiming Reuben Foster to a saint overnight in the eyes of the media. And maybe that's something that matters to him, because Dan Snyder's press coverage has typically been brutal. Everybody has hated him in the D.C. area because he's never had very much success as the owner of the Washington Redskins. Kareem Hunt went through and cleared waivers. But if you are the Redskins and you're trying to look down the road towards your future, what if in one fell swoop you sign Kareem Hunt? Because you're going to eventually need, I know they have Darius Geis who's injured, but you're going to eventually need another running back at least. Darius Geis may or may not be back to 100% for the start of the season in September. You can always use more than one running back. What if they went and got Kareem Hunt? They took Reuben Foster, and the reason why they were able to take those guys with off-the-field related incidents is because they also went and signed Colin Kaepernick. You may think I'm crazy. You may think I'm crazy like a fox. I think that's the way you have to think at this point if you are Dan Synder and your season has basically blown up with back-to-back broken legs at the quarterback position. I think this is the time where everything has gone awry and maybe you're a little bit desperate. You may think I'm crazy. We'll take some calls on this probably an hour or two. Is it a wild idea of mine if you are the Washington Redskins and you have been under siege for your claim of Reuben Foster, if you went ahead and said, you know what, we'll claim Kareem Hunt too, and we'll go grab Colin Kaepernick, wouldn't signing Colin Kaepernick basically protect the Washington Redskins from any criticism for going after these guys with domestic violence past? Because you say, look, we believe in fresh starts here with the Washington Redskins. And I think most people would say, you know what? They're signing Colin Kaepernick. I don't think you'd get that much attention elsewhere. It reminds me, honestly, of what happened with Urban Meyer when he was with the Florida Gators. He had Tim Tebow. And because he had Tim Tebow, nobody paid attention to all of the other craziness, all of the arrests, all the violence, everything else that was running awry at the Florida Gators, because Tim Tebow soaked up all the media atmosphere and attention, and Tim Tebow was such a saint. I think Colin Kaepernick would do the same thing. Now, I'm not sure that the Redskins would make that move, but I do know there aren't very many quarterbacks available who would make very much sense. I guess you could sign Nathan Peterman. I think he's still floating around out there. We'll discuss, and I'll bring it up with Charles Davis when we return. Charles, what would you do if you were the Washington Redskins? You're sitting now at 6-6. You have lost two quarterbacks to broken legs, Colt McCoy and Alex Smith. Expectations would be those guys are going to have long off-season recoveries. Whether they're ready even at the beginning of September, I think, is a legitimate question. I'm not a doctor, but it seems like it's unlikely that either one of those guys would be 100% by then. Mark Sanchez as your quarterback right now, you have to probably draft a quarterback, I would think, in the first round. There's not really anybody in the free agent market that you could sign that looks like they could be a big-time playmaker. I said if I were, and I say this as a guy who understands how controversial he is, if I were Dan Synder right now, I would 100% consider and explore signing Colin Kaepernick to compete with Mark Sanchez to see how he can do in the final 4 games of the season. They've already signed Reuben Foster. You know how controversial that was. You could maybe even go out and pick up Kareem Hunt if you did this, because you could argue, hey, you are a franchise that believes in fresh starts. You're not going to prejudge anybody based on what they did beforehand. What would you do if you were Dan Synder? Is my idea crazy?
Your idea is not crazy, Clay. Here's the thing. Colin Kaepernick should have been signed before Mark Sanchez.
Yep.
I mean, this is, if you're willing to sign Reuben Foster, there's no argument in my mind that you can sign Reuben Foster and that's okay, but we don't want to touch Colin Kaepernick.
Right.
You voided your own argument.
I agree 100% with you.
totally voided your own argument. Okay, look, I'm all for everyone having their own opinions and beliefs and convictions, and I won't fight with teams that say, listen, I'm not signing Kaepernick because in my mind I believe this. Okay, I don't agree with them, but that doesn't mean that they can't have their own opinion about the whole thing. All right, I see it as a different thing than they do. But if you're going to sign Reuben Foster, which to me is absolutely ludicrous, right from the jump, and the way that they handled it was ludicrous, and for this reason, if you're going to sign Reuben Foster, you better have someone out in front, and this is not a criticism of Doug Williams, because I know Doug and consider him a very good friend, but that was not his role to be out front and be the spokesperson for signing Reuben Foster.
Zero doubt.
All right? I mean, Clay, you and I have been in this position many different times, right? And we've seen who gets trotted out in front. You don't trot out the person that's not your PR person.
You don't trot out a guy just on a basic level in a hoodie to answer questions about domestic violence.
No,
right? I mean, that's just like it's just. It doesn't matter who the person is.
I don't care if it's the slickest talker going. I don't care if it's the winner of the Harvard debate competition. You don't trot them out like that. They better be out there in the coat and the tie and have some gravitas to the situation. So moving on past that, yeah, and at this stage, you know, whoever you sign, you just have to expect minimal deal. You're trying to get someone who can get you in and out of the huddle and get you up the line of scrimmage and run something of a semblance of an NFL-looking play. Because who can absorb a playbook at this point? Who can do all of these things? I mean, I can't believe on a football level what Washington has absorbed, and they're in the position that they are in terms of injuries, and still in a position where they might have an effect on the playoffs, let alone absolutely make the playoffs themselves.
I mean,
I'm not sure we believe it, but for them now because of all. But just to get to this point, people just go back and Google their transactions and injuries this year, and ask yourself, how in the heck did they win as many games as they did?
If they went 2-2, they would find themselves potentially in the playoff race as a wild card team. 100%, right? If you look at the NFC, playoff race. Okay, you'll like this analogy, I think. The Kaepernick analogy I was using was, you're in Florida. You know what happened when Urban Meyer had Tim Tebow. Yeah. There was all sorts of arrest, misbehavior, downright like an absolute almost, I'm trying to think of like a prison asylum almost, right? Like you had all sorts of craziness going on.
There was a certain lawyer, if you remember correctly, that got plenty of business during that. He was the team lawyer without being called the team lawyer, right? He was the guy that every time something happened, he was the one making the statement about what happened with that player, right?
There are a lot of teams that have top echelon, criminal justice attorney on retainer in their different cities. But the media was, and I think fans as well, disguised because Tim Tebow was such a saint that it was like all of his media coverage kind of blanketed over the Gators, and as a result, you didn't notice everything else that was going on because Tim Tebow soaked up so much of the media oxygen and attention, and he was a saint, right? I think that there was that element, right? No. I mean, I think there's an element of that would come for the Washington Redskins and help to cover up the decision that they made with Reuben Foster. Heck, I think they could even go and sign Kareem Hunt if they sign Colin Kaepernick, because all the oxygen would go to Cap.
Yeah, and the crazy part is what Cap is going through and why he's not playing versus what we're talking about with other people.
There's no doubt. There's zero doubt. Like, if you had to choose, like you said this off the bat, once you decide to sign Reuben Foster, who's arrested again for domestic violence, you have broken the glass on controversial signings, right? Like, and if there's anybody out there right now who believes, you know what, I think that Reuben Foster or Kareem Hunt or any of those guys are more controversial than Colin Kaepernick would be, I think you're crazy, right? I think most reasonable fans would agree that Kaepernick pales in comparison to the decisions of Reuben Foster and potentially Kareem Hunt.
A guy doesn't play in the league because of a belief in our system that needs help, and other guys are getting signed that are breaking laws of our country.
Yeah. I mean, there's a total. I'm with you. I mean, there's a totally. Once you made the decision, and I understand with you too. Look, I understand certainly the owners who say, you know what, I don't want anything controversial associated with my team at all.
And
that's at least consistent logic.
Yeah, listen, they have that right to have their belief that that person is not who I want in my organization. But don't trot that at me, and then sign Greg Hardy.
Yeah.
Right? Don't do that to me. Okay? Don't tell me you believe this part, and then sign a guy who not has only been accused of domestic violence. You pretty much believe that it happened. Okay? We've got Kareem Hunt now with the video. He's got a lot to work through, to put it mildly. Okay, so if I see him being signed, and we can go on, and I hate to always have Kaepernick loom over it, but in this situation, the best quarterback out there that we know that has played in the league would be him. He hasn't played in a while, but heck, the idea that you signed Mark Sanchez, but we don't now know on Colin Kaepernick, you're kidding me, right?
Here are the quarterbacks.
Hasn't proven anything in forever, and that's not a slam. That's just fact.
Here are the quarterbacks that are free agents right now if you are the Redskins. E.J. Manuel, T.J. Yates, Kellen Clemens, Josh Johnson, Nathan Peterman, maybe Matt Moore, Paxton Lynch. I mean, there is not much out there in terms of reclamation projects that you could. And again, the Redskins don't just have to think about these 4 games.
Yep.
They got to think about the offseason, because these guys with the broken legs, it seems to me, are unlikely to be ready to play, almost such that the Redskins are basically guaranteed to take a quarterback in the first round. The available quarterbacks out there: E.J. Manuel, T.J. Yates, Kellen Clemens, Josh Johnson, Nathan Peterman, Matt Moore, Paxton Lynch. There's nobody out there that's really very accomplished. And so I said maybe it makes sense to break the glass and go get Colin Kaepernick, particularly if you are the Washington Redskins right now and you have been getting raked over the proverbial coals via your decision to sign Reuben Foster, which was a major point of awkward discussion last night during the Monday Night Football broadcast. And so I even said that if you were Dan Synder, you could potentially go sign Kareem Hunt. You need a younger running back too. Maybe you want to pair Kareem Hunt with Darius Geis, who tore his ACL before the season started. And you can argue we're giving everybody a fresh start, and all of the attention would go to your signing of Colin Kaepernick, and nothing would go to anything else. Now, the irony of Colin Kaepernick going to work for the Redskins would be interesting for the social justice warrior contingent, but I honestly don't think there is a better quarterback available out there. Now, I don't know if Colin Kaepernick wants to play football. I don't know if he's even still doing regular football drills. It could be a disaster for him if he actually came back into the league, because it basically destroys his martyr image. But I think it would go a long way towards effectively ending the 2-year disaster that the NFL got into surrounding the Colin Kaepernick protest.